Hi, Sanjeev. How are you?
Hi, Neer. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yes, you are a very good friend, and we've seen your amazing work on the FinTech Nation Summit. This is a FinTech Week. It's also global. You have a vast experience, and for people to understand exactly about Whiteside, maybe you can give a little bit of an overview before we dive into your amazing slides.
Absolutely. Pleasure to do that. But before I do that, I must congratulate you on your noble efforts to build a fintech bridge between Israel and the Middle East. The two regions which are geographically close but are culturally apart. But what is similar in both the regions is the presence of a thriving fintech and innovation ecosystem. Thanks for that. Coming back to what we are planning to do at Whiteside, we tend to look at fintech phenomenon that has emerged across the world from a different lens. We call this lens the white space lens. And fintechs have come about to fill the seemingly small but significant white space that exists in financial services industry. And what fintechs are doing, they're using technology, data, design, and business model innovation to go after these white spaces. For example, if you look at some of the white spaces, there are customer segment white spaces. For example, Gen Z, millennials, women, students, all these customer segments have traditionally been ignored or not profitably served by traditional financial institutions. Similarly, there are product white spaces, for example, BNPL, commission-free trading, micro insurance, etc., which are not the products that traditional financial institutions came to innovate with. And lastly, even though the banks are the most trustworthy of the financial institution, but if you look at cryptocurrency, which is currently trending across the world with the Bitcoin valuation going through the roof, that also came into existence because there was a trust white space that came into existence after the financial crisis. And a lot of people lost trust in the financial institutions as well as government all around the world. So what we are planning to do at Whiteside is we aspire to build a fintech intelligence unit by performing very granular as well as holistic analysis of industry trends, as well as vertical deep dive analysis of successful fintech startups, and figure out what operating models, what revenue model, what product strategy has worked for them. And we want to do this for primarily four key stakeholders that we have in mind. And these are incumbent banks who are embarking upon their digital transformation journey. These are the second of them are fintech startups who are looking to grow or expand and become profitable. And the third is the investor segment who are evaluating either segments or the firm level opportunities to partner with entrepreneurs. And finally, we are also looking to cater to government and regulatory bodies who are looking to unleash the innovation prowess in their respective countries. So that's the agenda that around which we are planning to build Whiteside.
Amazing. And by the way, I every colleague of mine really respects what you do, respect your firm. You provide a high world-class the data and analysis and these reports that you're sharing with the fintech community. And I just have one wish. I want to see how we can take one or two clients from the people who are listening to us right now and really provide them even a deeper service, because what you have here is gold. So let's see what we can share today in the time that we have, and maybe we're going to do a follow-up after that, because a lot of people are looking for this talk. Your talk, by the way, on the FinTech Nation Summit was one of the best talks of the whole summit, and it got the most interest from all the neobanks and players around the world.
Thanks for the admiration, Neer.
All right, so now let's dive into the use cases and the scenarios you want to show me today. First, maybe an overview of the ecosystem, right?
Absolutely. So I'm just going to jump into a couple of slides that I have made. So this slide that I'm presenting right now on my screen, it basically summarizes some of the key neobanks that have come across the world and how they have innovated with the local cultural aspects and the business model to serve the local customers, and then they have grown over the years. If you look at this slide, apart from the neobanks that have emerged across the world, you can see there's a lot of difference in the way they operate and their ownership structure, their business model. Everything is different because they are serving different parts of the world. If you look beneath the names, what's interesting is there are multiple players who are in the race, and everyone has a different moat that they want to leverage. For example, some of the neobanks are powered by the telecom companies. Some of them are powered by the banks. Some of them are powered by the fintech startups. And some of them are also powered by the big tech companies like social media platforms, e-commerce firms, and corporates and brands. So all these different ownership structure gives different kinds of startups different strengths to leverage before they can innovate and bring the customer centricity to the banking industry.
Amazing.
Uh,
Just
yeah.
one thing about this slide. I mean, this is our playground. This is our friends from around the world. Like we were talking about fintech bridges and fintech nation. You put all of them in one slide, and that's really helpful in understanding the ecosystem. And I think you're doing it very well all throughout all the year, not just now, but today we get a chance to interview you and look at the slide together with you. So yeah, continue. It's
absolutely.
amazing.
And I would just like to highlight one thing. If you look at the Middle East and North Africa region, there are almost 12 banks that have come about. And what's very significant in this region is almost all the banks are subsidiaries of an incumbent bank. Either if you look at Israel or you look at Middle East countries, we are still to see a new fintech startup coming up to disrupt the industry, which I'm sure some of them are already working on. And you also shared a couple of names that are coming up in Israel. So it'll be very interesting to see how these new startups are going to fare against the incumbents.
Yeah, some of the logos here are speaking even on this summit, and a lot of them spoke on the other summit, like Revolut and you know, Pepper here I see, and we bank and We Lab Bank and others. You know, we have one of our partners is Invest Hong Kong, and Mr. King, as you know,
Yeah.
shared a very nice talk about all the virtual banks over there. It's amazing, and we have, of course, Tinkoff, and you're going to speak about Tinkoff, I know. So and Starling, yeah, just go on. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Just moving on, this slide, I've tried to capture the top 15 challenger banks who are the most valued challenger banks across the world. And here we are focused only on independent challenger banks. And that means we are not looking at banks who are funded by banks or a corporate or a telecom. Those kind of banks are not included in this slide. But what's interesting to note here is a couple of things. So together, these 15 banks serve over 100 million customers globally, which is a very sizable number if you look at the volume of their scale that they have achieved together. 50% of them are from the US, expectedly so, and 30% from Europe, 20% from Latin America. And here, what I would like to highlight that there's so much white space that currently exists in Asia, which includes Israel, Middle East, India, Australia, Southeast Asia. And that is where a lot of traction is happening in this part of the world. So the next 5 years, we are going to see the battleground move from Europe and the US to Asia. Another good point to notice here is only 20% of these highly valued banks are profitable. So 3 out of 15 banks are profitable. And if you look at all these banks, almost all of them claim to have unicorn status. So that's where the rubber hits the road, that you need not just get away by having a unicorn status against your name. Are you breaking even? Are you getting closer to the profitability is something that we need to look at. And that is what I'm going to focus on. 2 of the banks who have achieved the profitability while actually growing at a stellar pace. So moving on to the next section of my presentation, which is path to profitability, and it is probably one of the most talked about themes when anyone talks about neobanking. And one of the banks which has achieved it is Tinkoff Bank. And they're a bank based out of Russia, a very less talked about geography, but pretty significant if you look at the innovation that these guys have managed to bring about. And if you look at the route that they have taken one of the toughest route to build a neobank. And that route was to start with a credit product. If you look at the European counterparts or the US counterparts, most of the neobanks have started with a prepaid debit card or a savings account or a current account. And once they have certain amount of customers, then they launch credit products. And even after 5 years, 6 years of existence, many of the neobanks are still not able to launch credit products at scale. So that is one difference that Tinkoff has monetized. And once they have this business model which is built around credit products, what they have done very differently from other neobanks is to bring lifestyle products, to bring non-financial products on top of it. And that has helped them engage with the customers in a much more frequent manner than the other neobanks who only have financial products. And the whole partnership ecosystem that Tinkoff has built. And if you look at Russia, it's not a very, it's not a geography where regulator has taken a front runner kind of a role like US or Singapore or Europe. So they have done this despite not getting any support from the regulator. So that's one of the product strategy that has worked for Tinkoff that some of the neobanks in other parts of the world can take lessons from. Only one neobank which has done similar to this is Nubank in Brazil. If you look at it, they have also started with a credit product. And among the big banks, probably they are one of the closest to breaking even. So this kind of tells us that starting with a credit product is probably one of the routes to get to profitability.
By the way, Neri from Tinkoff, who spoke at the FinTech Nations Summit, is watching, and I believed in Tinkoff from the early start, following everything that they do. I think it's so good that you brought this use case because not enough conferences are giving the an emphasis of Tinkoff. This is amazing, super important.
Yeah. In fact, I was also talking to Neri a couple of days back, and he mentioned something which was very interesting and entertaining also. When I asked him what led Tinkoff to focus too much on profitability and not too much on fundraising. So he said, because Russia is a difficult market in terms of investors and fundraising is not a very easy process. It's more like necessity is the mother of invention that they went after. Because they couldn't raise funds, they have to depend on making profits if they had to continue. And that's what has worked wonders for them.
Yeah.
And if you look at this slide, one thing I would love to talk about is the number of active users that they have. So most of the banks, they talk about number of users they have. Nobody cares if you have 20 million customers and 50% of them are not using your app even once in a month, right? And that is where if Tinkoff really stands out from the rest of the neobanking pack, that they are claiming 2 million of daily active users. And in fact, this number has gone up in October when they have launched one of the subscription plans, which brings Netflix, Spotify, all kinds of digital services that the customers are using. And that will push this daily active users number even further. So these are some of the things that Tinkoff has done superbly well. And that is one of the reasons that I would attribute towards them turning profitable within 3 years of them starting the business.
Great.
Moving on, I think this is the darling bank of most of the people across the world today. And one of the most fortunate news that came for this darling bank a couple of weeks back was they also turned profitable on a monthly basis, not on a quarterly or an annual basis. So we have to keep in mind that we still have to see if they manage to continue the profitability over the coming months and the coming year before getting them the profitability tag. But what's very important about Starling Bank strategy is two things. One, if you look at their focus on SME banking, it's one of the banks which started to focus on SME banking from the very beginning. And in fact, one of the outcomes of this focus was them winning a 100 million grant from BCR in 2019, which was superbly timed, and they managed to use that fund to further grow their business. And the other thing that is super important about Starling is their focus on the entire spectrum of SME. So it's not like Revolut, it's not like Monzo, who are just focusing on the sole proprietors, the micro, part of the small medium business, but they are actually having focus on the entire spectrum of small medium businesses. And the second part of that SME strategy is they have built a marketplace which brings a lot of complementary offerings that serve the SMEs, their founders, their partners, without taking efforts to do certain financial or non-financial tasks. So these are a couple of strategies that have worked for Starling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I'm gonna do is what I've done in this slide is I've just put together a deep dive analysis of their October metrics to understand the profitability that they have claimed. If you look at this slide on the top right, what stands out is their supreme focus on SME lending. Almost 94% of their loan book comes from the SME lending space. And because of the COVID crisis, this has gained further momentum. So the BBLS and CBILS schemes, which are launched by the UK government, Starling became the partner of the government to disburse these loans, and that has worked wonders to them. So this is one of the examples of how people can turn a challenge into an opportunity. And that's what Starling had managed to do with the COVID-19 crisis. Moving on to the right side, if you look at the operating metrics, what's interesting is over the last 5 months, they have managed to contain their costs. So the operating costs haven't increased so much, and they have managed to grow the revenue. So this is what basically tells us is the operating profit or the marginal cost of acquiring and serving a customer is almost getting to zero. And this is what every neobank dreams of. The moment this happens, then every extra customer that you're bringing to your bank is going to be a profitable customer. So that's something that has happened for them. Moving on to the bottom right of the graph, which is a super interesting chart. And if you look at it in the 1 year, they have managed to flip around the revenue split. So in October 19, they were making 40% of their revenue from interest income and 60% from fees and commission. It is actually reversed in October 20. And that is something that has propelled them towards profitability in such a short time. And the last point that I want to make on this slide, as I mentioned earlier also, that they have witnessed exceptional growth in terms of both retail customers as well as the small, medium businesses. And the sole trader accounts and the retail accounts have grown 80% year on year. And that's something that's very enviable, what Starling has achieved. So these are a couple of themes that Starling has pursued, and we can now attribute some of these themes that have led them to become profitable.
Yes, and Starling got the best score out. We did a research with the FinTech Nations, and we asked for all the experts like you, what is their favorite one, and all of them said Starling with this data, and some of it wasn't available back then in September, but still amazing reviews. Even Peter Ramsey from the Build for Mars, if you remember, he gave them and asked him an open question, what is your favorite one? And he also said Starling. So there's something about Starling that is working, and this data shows it.
Definitely. Absolutely.
All right, let's move to the next one. Yes.
So now I'm just going to touch upon one of the white spaces that the neobanks are going after. And this is the Gen Z customer segment that we are talking about. If you look at all the neobanks which came into existence in the last 5 to 7 years, most of them focused on the millennials. And the neobanks which are coming into existence now, they are focusing on the next neo generation, which is the Gen Z. And the customer behavior is totally different if you compare it with any of the previous generations. They're truly digital. They live their lives on mobile. They don't know how to do, things on laptop. So these are the kind of traits, and their value system is also pretty different if you look at the previous generation. And with Greta, leading the environmental theme across the world, a lot of Gen Z customers are actually aligning with those companies who are having green in their, fundamental message that they're going after. So what we are seeing, a lot of neobanks who are coming into existence in the last year and this year, they are uniquely focused on Gen Z as a customer segment. And the other thing that we are seeing is the neobanks who are serving the millennials and older generation. They are also launching kids-focused and teen-focused cards and prepaid accounts, along with giving parents control to manage their accounts and bring some educational material also, so that kids can start to learn the financial literacy is embedded in their curriculum. And those are the things that are going to define the neo-banking segment of the coming future. So that's one white space that I really wanted to touch upon.
Yes.
So that's it with my presentation. That's how I wanted to touch upon about the neo-banking trends that have come about across the world. Happy to take any questions or comments from you in the audience.
I do have a question. Let's go back to the Gen Z report. If you can show up the slide. So yeah, of course, I know the ones in the US STEP I see here in Current, and we also have Razor FinTech that is coming, and a lot of these players here are doing amazing. But I want to ask you about the ones in India. So if you can mention some of the stories behind these logos here.
Absolutely. Happy to do that, Nir. So one of the early neobanks that have come in India, which focused on Gen Z, was FarmPay. And the way they have gone about their customer acquisition strategy, their customer engagement strategy has been phenomenal. They have engaged with their Gen Z customers, the youngsters, by allowing them to personalize their cards. They are engaging them by making them the influencers who are aiding them in their customer acquisition strategy. And a lot of videos and Instagram photos you can find where the youngsters are opening up their debit card boxes, putting up the photo, talking to each other about the experience of receiving the card, which is made for them. So those are the kind of strategies that have been working really well in India.
Which one you were mentioning? Which one of these?
It's FarmPay, the one on the top, yes, on the right side.
Yeah, I see. And the one under that?
Yes. So another one is Walrus, which is also doing pretty well. They're also Y Combinator recognized firm. So that has given them a lot of focus in the media also, which has allowed them to get a lot of traction in the Gen Z segment. And if you look at the Gen Z customer segment in India, it's a pretty big segment, right? Because the population of the country is so big, and the demographics of the country is so nicely twisted towards the younger generation. All these banks that are coming up, they will have a great chance to catch them young, is what they say, and then grow their business on top of how these youngsters are going to continue banking with these folks once the business starts.
Yeah, this slide is going to get much more data, of course. You're learning every day and focusing. And the one that you just mentioned, I saw that they launched a personalized card when these youngsters can come and create their own signature and really have their personalized card. These are great example. Razor FinTech has the card with the LED, the Razor card. Again, amazing. And just like the ones you mentioned in the US, they're working with TikTok and influencers, and that's amazing. And we're going to see more and more on that space, that's for sure. all of these markets are super, super interesting. I mean, that's it for today, but I'm sure a lot of people will still have questions here. So why don't you exactly show us how to follow you and how to connect, I guess also on LinkedIn, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. So all these talks, by the way, are going to be posted after the summit, but this is like the lessons, and that's why I told professionals also on the FinTech Nations, learn, because all these, it's happening all around the world, and you're launching a neobank. You need a firm like yours to be on your side to gather the data so you can have the best killer app and sticky features so you can launch to these markets and other reports that you're going to launch later. And I always want your team on my side. It's a clever team. So please thank you for all the team on behalf of me and the FinTech Week, and stay around because a lot of people will want to connect with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Neil. Great chatting with you always. Thanks a lot.
Great friend. Take care and see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.